Hello Year 4, I hope you're all okay. To start with our reading lesson today, I've got some retrieval questions for you. So thinking about everything that you read yesterday, can you remember the following 4 questions? I want you to have a think about them, see if you can remember what had happened in yesterday's reading session. So pause the video here now please and have a think. Okay, so number 1, what animal did Fred say that you could follow to find the water? Do you remember? That's right, he said that you could follow ants to be able to find the river. Well done. What colour were the ants that Lila told Fred not to touch because they can be dangerous? Because Lila said, Fred, you can't touch these ants because they're very dangerous. What colour were they? Do you remember? They were red. Well done. She said that you couldn't touch them because they would maybe hurt you or bite you. Next one then, what had the ants taken them to instead of the river? Because we knew that they took them somewhere quite disgusting, but where did the ants take them? That's right, they took them to a carcass of a bird. So do you remember what that word carcass means? Well done, it means basically a dead bird, a bird that had been left to rot and die. So that's where the ants took them to, because they obviously smelt the blood on them, so they wanted to go that way instead of the river. Finally then, what was Fred's reason for why they shouldn't follow the maggots? Because if we remember, they were making a joke about, we may as well follow the maggots rather than ants, because the maggots will probably take us somewhere better than this. And then Fred, what was his reason why they shouldn't follow the maggots? Well done. He said that the maggots will probably walk a bit slower than the ants. So he was making a bit of a joke, probably trying to wind Connor from my inference from that. So today we're going to be learning to make predictions based on a text. So by the end of today's reading session, you will be able to look for keywords or phrases in a text. You'll be able to use different clues in a text to make predictions and guesses and what you think might happen. You'll also be able to support these predictions using evidence and direct quotes from the text. Now to start with, we have our vocabulary words for today. So one of our vocabulary words for today is bewildered. This word bewildered is an adjective. It has 3 syllables, bewildered, and it means to be perplexed and confused, very puzzled. So you can see a picture of a woman here looking very bewildered. She looks a bit confused. She doesn't really know what to think or what's going on. In the book, it's quoted as, Fred stared, bewildered. So to me, I'm inferring that because this word bewildered means perplexed and confused, that Fred might be confused about something, but we don't know what. Another way we could use this word bewildered by saying, he saw the bewildered look on my face. Maybe he saw that I looked quite confused. Or some more synonyms, baffled, confused and puzzled. Finally then, the antonym, one of the antonyms for bewildered would be clear, because if something is bewildered, it's looking confused, if it's the opposite of that, that would be clear, so that would be our antonym. Our second word for today is this word dwelt. Dwelt is a past tense verb, so it's a doing word, and it has only 1 syllable. The word dwelt means to live in or at a specific place, and I've got a picture of a house here to remind you that dwelt can mean the same as live, lodge, or stay, so meaning to live in or at a specific place. So from the book, it's used in the sentence, and they had all dwelt at great length on caimans. So we're going to find out what a caiman is. I'll give you a clue, it's an animal, but we're thinking here, we're inferring here that something has lived on this animal. And another way you could use it is by saying groups of people dwelt in the caves, they lived in the caves, and an antonym for this word dwelt could be depart or left, so leaving, because if they're living, if they've dwelt, they've lived, the opposite would be to leave and depart from that area. We're going to continue where we left off yesterday, and then I will be talking to you a bit about prediction. So I've got the bottom of page 41 here because we didn't quite finish it, so I'm going to start off where we left, okay? Fred slipped to the back of the procession. Every 3 or 4 trees he broke a branch and stuck a leaf on the hinge it made. Con shook her head. That's not going to be any good. You need something bigger. She tore one of the ruffles off her once white blouse and tied it to a tree. There! Fred turned to look at her, crouched in the dappled light. She moved stiffly, as if unaccustomed to using her own body. Got that word unaccustomed there. Do you remember what accustomed means? Accustomed means being used to something, so she wasn't used to using her own body. and her clothes seemed to sit on her like a bear trap. There are outfits that suggest of their own accord and that their owner should sit still and smile nicely. Con had been dressed in one such outfit. Before the crash, had coloured it brown and green and red. "Good thing you've got ruffles to spare," he said, and grinned. Con turned on him the kind of look that breaks noses. "Shut up, cricket jumper." Fred took a step backwards. "I only meant it's useful to have clothing with extra bits attached. Boys' clothes don't." "Fine, whatever you say. You don't have to try and be nice to me, you know." "What?" Fred stared, bewildered, so he was quite confused why Con was all of a sudden lashing out on him. "I just want to get out of this vile place and back to school. I don't mean to be rude, but I'm not really interested in making friends, especially not with little kids." Lila heard them. "I'm not a little kid," she said quietly. She spoke without taking her eyes off the ants. "I'm just small for my age." "How old are you?" Con turned to Fred. Fred told her. "But that's hardly older than me," said Con. "And me," said Lila. "I thought you were much older," said Con. Fred shrugged. "Just tall," he said. "But that means there's no adults. Not even any nearly adults. Just 4 children in the Amazon jungle." "That," said Fred, "sounds true." "Unfortunately," said Lila. Fortunately, echoed Max. He couldn't say it right. He wandered off a few paces, blowing nose bubbles with his snot. Lila darted after him and grabbed him by the sleeves. "Stay close," she said. Her face was bones and eyes and nerves. Now, why do you think her face might have just been bones? Yeah, because they're in the Amazon jungle. They might not have been able to eat much, so they might be losing that weight on their face. Well done. As they walked on, a smell came to Fred on the air. Something sharp and fresh, something that smelt more blue than green. "Is that the river? I think I can smell it," he said. "Don't be ridiculous," said Con. "You can't smell water." But then she broke off. Through the thickly ranged trees, Fred could see a flicker of something that moved. "Come on," called Con. "I found the river." They stood where the ground curved down to meet the river. The river was a stark, bright blue. "Do you think there are caimans?" Lila asked. Despite the sun overhead, she shivered. We'll find out what a caiman is in a minute. In the long winter of Fred's illness, he'd read dozens of books about explorers venturing out into the wild, armed with only a pith helmet, which is a really tiny hat, and a penknife, so he didn't have much. He had a shelf full, all dog-eared and food-stained, and they had all dwelt, so lived, at great length on caimans. He decided to be honest. "Probably," he said, "but I don't know how else we're going to get water." "What are caimans?" asked Con. "Alligators," said Fred, "like crocodiles, but with longer snouts, so noses." "But they're smaller," said Lila. "Probably." "Probably?" said Con. "Oh, good." "The caimans like the sunny side of the bank," said Lila, "and we're in the shade here, so we're probably fine. Think of how this probably word looks. It's in italics, so maybe they're quite doubtful about whether this probably could be definitely." "Everything's a risk here," said Fred. "I'm going in." Every hair on his arm stood on edge as he scanned the bank. He pulled off his shirt, then put it back on again. It occurred to him that it needed washing as much as he did. He slipped down the bank, his feet squelching in the mud, and dived in head first. The river was a gift. It soothed the burn of his cuts and the ache in his feet. Fred trod water, then kicked downwards, below the surface where it was colder, and sucked in a mouthful of water. It had a tinge of mud to it, and a strand of waterweed wrapped itself around his tongue. But now that's all we're going to read today. So today we found out that they finally found the river, and Fred has gone in, and it's really helped him soothe his burns, soothe his cuts, and everything that was aching from this plane crash. It's all helped him. But the river did taste a bit nasty. Now, today we're looking at predicting. Now, there's someone that's going to help us with predicting, and this is called Predicting Pip, so it's our pup down here. Now, Predicted Pip helps us to work out what will happen next by looking at the different clues that are in the text. So it means that she's able to help you make predictions about what will happen after a given point. So a point in a story helps you to predict what might happen next. She helps you to look for clues in the text to give you these predictions. Now, we've seen predicting Pip in a variety of ways. We can see her by looking at a tick box question, yes, no, or maybe, then the question asking you to explain why you chose one of these tick boxes using evidence from the text. And this is one we're going to look at today. Another one here is just simply asking you a question and asking you to just use evidence from the paragraph to support whether you predict what you do. So finally, you're looking at a tick box question again, but a multi-choice question. So it will give you a question and it will give you some options, and you have to choose the option that's most appropriate based on what you know so far. We're going to be looking at some questions together first of all. Now here we've got a similar question to the first one we've looked at today. My question is, do you think that Fred will continue to drink from the river water when it had a tinge of mud to it? So that means it had a bit of a taste of mud when he drank it. Now, when I am thinking about this question, I am then looking back to what I already know about Fred. Now I know that Fred, along with the other children, had a pure desperation and really wanted, they were really, really thirsty, really dehydrated, and they really wanted to find this river water. And if I remember from the previous chapter we've read and previous pages, that they didn't want to drink from the cesspool because the cesspool water was really dirty and would probably make them really ill. Now that could sway me to think maybe Fred won't continue to drink from the river water if it had a tinge of mud to it. But then I'm thinking, the pure desperation that Fred and the other children are feeling, the pure really need to drink something, would probably sway me to say that yes, I think Fred would continue to drink from it. So there, I've used what I know and used what I've previously read to really come to a decision. But I'm still going to continue to find my evidence from the text because it says that yes, you can choose, but you need to explain your choice using evidence. So first thing, I'm going to find this where it says it had a tinge of mud to it. So I'm going to see, I found it here. It had a tinge of mud to it and a strand of waterweed wrapped itself around his tongue. So I found the quote and I'm going to start to read around it. When I've read around it, for some reason it's disappeared, but let's just ignore that. I have ticked the yes box here. But when I've read around it, I then can start to look at the evidence from the text. And I can see that previously in the same paragraph, Con has said, come on, I found the river. And that suggests to me that they're really, really desperate to find this river. And because of this desperation, that is a quote that I will probably use in my answer to back my decision up that yes, Fred would drink this water. And then I can start, there it is, then I can start to shape my answer. And I have chosen to shape my answer a bit like this. I think that Fred will continue to drink from the river water when it had a tinge of mud to it. I think this because the children had spent hours looking for the river. They were excited to have finally found it. I know this, as in the text it says, come on, called Con, I've found the river. The use of the exclamation mark also shows me that they couldn't wait to drink the water. A tinge of mud doesn't mean a lot of mud either, so I think Fred would be able to forget about that and enjoy the taste that they had spent so long searching for. So if we break this down into the bits that I've included, in the yellow I've started with my own opinion and I've stated yes or no. In the green, I'd then continued my own opinion and actually justified it by saying why, because the children had spent hours looking. In the blue, I've then done what the question has asked, used evidence. In the text, it says, come on, called Con. And I've also said what this evidence shows, the exclamation mark showing me that they couldn't wait to drink. I finally brought it back together in the grey by linking it back to the original question by saying that a tinge of mud doesn't mean a lot of mud, it only means a little bit. So Fred will probably be able to forget about that and enjoy the taste. Here, I've got another question, and I want you to have a go and see if you think you know the answer. Pause the video and have a go, please. Okay, so which of these things is Con most likely to say if they ask her to go back to the den? Straight away I can start to think, how did Con feel when they wanted to go to the den? I'd absolutely love to go. Did she really have fun at the den? Probably not. So I'm going to automatically say rule that out. I'm going to keep going. No way, I'm not going back there in case we get eaten. Maybe she could have said that. That's something that she did say. She was quite worried about this cannibalism going on where humans eating other humans.